You work from home. You've got your laptop open, your kettle on, your heating running, your electricity meter quietly ticking away. And up until yesterday, literally yesterday, the government was giving you a small bit of tax relief for that. A little acknowledgement that, yes, working from home costs money. Well, as of today, April the 6th, Rachel Reeves has walked into your home office, unplugged your kettle, and taken that relief with her. Thanks for that, Chancellor. Welcome back to British Reform. Today we're breaking down one of the sneakiest tax changes this Labour government has pulled off, the abolition of the working from home tax relief, which kicked in this morning at the start of the new tax year. Around 300,000 people working from home in the UK have lost their annual home working allowance as of this Monday, April the 6th. Sorry, live. And if you're one of them and you're only finding out about it now, don't worry, you're not alone. Because as we'll get into, this one was very quietly buried. So let's start with the basics. What was this relief? Who had it? And why did it matter? HMRC allowed eligible employees to claim a flat rate of £6 a week from the 2020 to 2021 tax year without providing receipts. The relief was designed to cover additional household costs like increased utility bills and business phone calls for employees required to work from home. Gov.uk? No receipts needed. No complicated forms. Just, here's £6 a week's worth of relief to cover the fact your electricity bill went up because you're working at your kitchen table. Simple. Sensible. Gone. Now, £6 a week doesn't sound like a fortune. But add it up. Removal of this tax relief will mean basic rate taxpayers see a tax increase of £62, and at the higher rate, £124. Sorry, live. For a higher rate taxpayer, that's over £100 a year vanishing from their pocket. In a cost of living crisis, while energy prices are climbing again, while inflation keeps nibbling away at wages. Brilliant timing, Rachel. Absolutely pitch perfect. And here's the kicker. This wasn't announced with a fanfare. There was no big speech, no press conference, no "we're taking this from you" moment in the Commons. The removal of the tax relief was announced by Chancellor Rachel Reeves in the autumn budget last year, and with so many policy announcements made then, this one perhaps fell through the cracks of general awareness. Teesside Live fell through the cracks. That's one way of putting it. Another way of putting it is, it was buried under a mountain of other announcements at the exact moment people were overwhelmed with budget coverage, and very few people knew about it until the deadline was already breathing down their necks. Funny how that works, isn't it? Now the government's official justification for scrapping this is worth examining, because it is truly a masterpiece of bureaucratic spin. HMRC cited concerns around non-compliance, stating that after checking claims, over half were deemed to be ineligible for the relief, indicating high levels of non-compliance. Gov.uk, over half the claims were ineligible. So rather than HMRC doing its job and rejecting those claims, the solution was to scrap the whole relief for everyone. That's like your local council finding out some people are overstaying their parking permits, so they bulldoze the entire car park. Problem solved. Nobody parks illegally anymore. Nobody parks at all either, but we'll gloss over that. And what do they save by doing this? Brace yourself for the staggering sum that apparently justified pulling a benefit from 300,000 people. HMRC estimates that the abolition measure will save £115 million over 5 years from April 2026. Sorry, live. £115 million. Over 5 years. That is £23 million a year. For context, the UK government spends around £1 trillion annually. This is pocket change. This is the government rooting down the back of the sofa, finding a tenner, and going, there we go, fiscal responsibility. Meanwhile, working people, the ones Labour said they were elected to protect, are footing the bill for it. But wait, because there's a whole other layer to this that makes it even more infuriating, and it's called fiscal drag. You might have heard this phrase thrown around. Think of it like this. Imagine the goalposts for income tax were painted on the pitch in 2021, and since then the pitch has expanded massively due to inflation and wage growth. But the goalposts have not moved. So more and more players, workers, find themselves past the line without anyone officially moving anything. That's fiscal drag. For the 2026-27 tax year, The standard personal allowance remains frozen at £12,570. Because this threshold has been frozen for several years, rising wages and inflation mean more people are being pushed into higher tax brackets. Debitam. So even if your salary only went up to keep pace with the cost of living, you might now find yourself paying a higher rate of tax than you were 2 years ago. Not because you got richer, because the threshold stayed still while everything else moved. So let's add that up. You're working from home. You've lost your £62 or £124 a year in tax relief. And on top of that, you might have silently drifted into a higher tax band without anyone telling you. And your energy bills are going up because the Middle East is on fire and oil prices are spiking and Ed Miliband won't open a gas field. This is what Labour's economic management looks like in practice. Death by 1,000 little cuts, each one small enough to escape the headlines, all of them adding up to a very real squeeze on very real people. Now to be fair, and we will be fair, there's technically still a route for home workers to get some support. Employers can still pay a tax-free home working allowance of up to £6 per week directly to remote employees without needing receipts or utility bill calculations. Debitam. So your employer can still give you this money tax-free. The difference is it now has to come from your employer rather than being claimed directly from HMRC. The government's framing is that this encourages employer-led support. The reality is that if your employer doesn't offer it, you're simply out of pocket and you have no recourse. If you work for a generous company with a solid HR department, you might be fine. If you work for a small business, a startup, or a boss who hasn't read the HMRC update, you're losing that money and there's nothing you can do about it. The inequality of it is staggering. And if there's one thing you absolutely must take away from this video right now, especially if this is news to you, it's this. The estimated 300,000 people currently claiming for the tax relief can still do so for tax year 2025 to 2026 and retrospectively for up to 4 previous tax years, but this will no longer be possible for the new tax year starting this April. The deadline for claiming relief in relation to the 2021 to 22 tax year was the 5th of April 2026. The news, so if you haven't already claimed for previous years, get on it now. The 2021 to 22 window has technically just closed, but 2022 to 23, 2023 to 24, 2024 to 25 and the current year you can still claim. Go to the HMRC website, log into your government gateway account, and get that money back. It's yours. It's sitting there. Don't leave it for Rachel Reeves to keep. The bigger picture here is this. A government that campaigned on working people's interests has quietly removed a tax relief specifically designed for working people, buried the announcement in a budget when nobody was looking, justified it by blaming the taxpayers themselves for non-compliance, and saved a sum of money so small it's almost insulting to pretend it was about the public finances. All while freezing the thresholds that drag more workers into higher tax brackets every single year without a single vote being cast on it. The new tax year started today. It started with you paying more. And most people didn't even know it was coming. If that makes you angry, you're right to be angry. And you know exactly what to do. Smash that like button, leave a comment below telling us how this affects you, and subscribe to British Reform for daily UK politics coverage that cuts through the noise. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Because while the government hopes you aren't paying attention, we are, and we'll make sure you are.